An interesting concept that I've always done every single New Year's is for my New Year's resolution. My New Year's resolution is always pretty much the same thing: stay on track with my goals and get rid of unnecessary people who don't really need to be in my life. So typically, every single year, I make sure I'm staying on my goals personally, and I get rid of any unnecessary people that I don't really need in my life, or any people who are fake and or phony, and or can't carry their own weight, and or throw around the friends title loosely. I typically get rid of people like that every single year, or people who want to fake like they're friends, but they change on you, or they get brand new on you, or people who come into your life, all of a sudden become a friend out of nowhere. All of a sudden you're friends. You ain't even know you were friends. You ain't co-sign on being friends, but all of a sudden you're friends now. It's like, wait, what? Like, and that's something I've always noticed when it comes to women. Women will always, for some odd reason, call you their friend as if they don't really know what the friend title is. Or, it's something that's interesting when it comes to it. I find it very weird and very funny. But you'll notice, like, if you ever notice, like, if for guys, if two guys become friends, it's something that's been forged over a long period of time. If a woman is calling you her friend, but you never refer to her as a friend, you're only there for short term gain, or you're only there for a short term purpose until she actually meets her long term purpose. That's typically how a lot of these friendships actually work. Or you're there for her own personal pleasure or her own personal needs, or as needed, as we say in the PRN, as we would say in the medical field. You're basically there as needed, or there as you can possibly go along, or things along the lines of that. So when it comes down to it, it ends up being one of those things where you got to learn to know what your role is in people's lives. It's basically what I talked about in the one series, the one video, temporary friends versus long term friends versus relationship, or temporary ships, temporary ships, situationships, and relationships. It's basically what was talking about in that series when I referred to, like, when I was talking about all the different things that you could possibly be in. There's situationships, there's relationships, and then there's temporary ships. And typically, what women do is they'll basically try to pull you in as a beta, or they'll try to pull you in as something else, and then they'll basically use you up until they either can't use you anymore, or they get to their goal or their destination that they needed to be at, that they couldn't get to without you. It's typically how it works. So what ends up happening is you end up being a situationship or a temporary ship for her own personal gain, or for her own personal good, or for her own personal feel goods. Is another good thing. Is another thing that I've always noticed when it comes to women. So you're basically in it for her to feel good about herself. And the sad part about that is when that happens, you as a man have to be able to mitigate that problem and make it so that you're not going to financially suffer, mentally suffer, emotionally suffer, and time wise suffer. So what you can't do is actually get caught up or get sucked into what a woman wants, or what she wants you for, or what her attention. Because the sad part about that, a woman will tell you one thing, but her intentions are another thing. Or a woman will tell you things to try to draw you in, to bring you closer so she can feel special, and she doesn't necessarily always mean what she says for all intents and purposes. It's basically the concept of you both get in a car and you ask your girlfriend or your significant other, if I'm pretty sure y'all had them, where do you want to go for dinner? And she goes, I don't know. The sad part about that is she does know where she wants to go for dinner, but she just wants to be an ass, basically, is what I would usually refer to it to, or difficult. would be a better explanation for that. But we as men and men in general have to learn how to lessen the burden and mitigate those problems when we're actually approached with these problems and stuff like this when it comes to women, because women would keep on doing it and keep on using up your patience, your time, your money, and your emotions up until they no longer need you anymore and they just discard you. And this is typically one of those many things that a lot of men always fall into, or a lot of men don't really understand. And it's always been one of those things where I've always said, if you're going to be dating one person and you're not really quite in a relationship, always keep aces in a hole, or always keep a person ready to go if that's what you need to do. Or if you're not fin to be in a relationship, always be willing to walk away from a relationship, a friendship, a situationship, or any type of arrangement that you got going on for all intents and purposes. There's also arrangementships too. But be ready to walk away from all this shit at a drop of a hat, because if you're not, then you'll feel some type of way, and you'll feel like you've been duped, lied to, and you'll feel like, you'll hate the world, or you'll hate women, or you'll feel some type of way about women, when in fact you weren't strong enough to walk away as a man. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that play into you not being strong enough to walk away as a man. And that's mainly society and the gynocentric society of, Disney, that, teaches you that you shouldn't do that, and that's wrong that you do that. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to walk away to mitigate any damages done to you. Or you got to be able to walk away to lessen the load, or lessen anything that can possibly destroy you, or, take away from your time, your money, your emotional state, and everything under the sun. Because typically the thing that I've always loved about people is they talk the most trash, but at the end of the day, they need you more than you need them. And that's something I've always noticed. It's like, no matter who I meet, they would always need you more than you need them. And at the end of the day, for all intents and purposes, if you can't quite understand that, you're not willing to be a patient person. First, learn to be patient and wait people out, for all intents and purposes, because at the end of the day, it's going to come back around where they need you, or it's going to come back around in your favor. It always does. And this is typically how a lot of this stuff actually works. So when you're able to do it properly and do it big, you never really run into problems, and you can always walk away mostly unscathed, or pretty much unscathed. Yeah. It sounds like an interesting concept, but at the end of the day, you got to do it for your own emotional health and your own well-being. You got to do it for you and you alone. Never do something for somebody else. Adios.